Denise. How are
Hi.
you?
Hi, I'm good. How about you?
Hi, Eric. I love you as always. I have to say that. You know I do every time I talk to you.
He said, yes, you have to say that.
Yeah.
He says, because I want to hear it. He says, even though I feel it in your heart, I want to hear the words. He says, I love hearing the words.
That's good.
And
Well-
so he says, I love you. And he's very, it's like he's getting, does he like spring or something? Because he's real into spring right now. He's
Yeah, he does.
he's
does.
showing me he's really getting into the spring part.
That's awesome. All right, so we want to see if we can get Colin Powell in here for us to interview Eric. And we have so many questions, so the answers are going to have to be. I'll have to tell him that, I guess, pretty brief.
Erik has him here. So Erik brought him in because I told Erik a little earlier that, hey, this is who we're going to do. So can you please get him ready? I was like, get him dressed or whatever. It was my thoughts. And
He can probably dress himself.
Yes. So Erik says he's here, and they've been hanging out. He says they've been hanging out.
What does he look like to you?
He looks pretty similar to his picture, except he looks probably 20 years younger to me than his picture. Yeah. And he's a little slimmer, but I feel like he's more muscular than what he was. And he said he used to be pretty muscular, like I guess he worked out more, I guess, whatever. And he's doing that. Erik says they were just feel like drinking coffee or something, it looks like.
Okay, well, we have a lot of questions, General Powell, so hopefully we can get through them with relatively brief but succinct answers. The first one for the community is, did you die from the COVID vaccine? If not, what was the true cause of your passing?
He says,
start out with the death question. Why don't we?
Yeah. He said, no, this is a good question. He goes, because people have a right to know. He said, he said, everyone knows I had cancer. He says, because that's always publicized. He said, did the COVID vaccine help me to transition? He said, absolutely.
Did you have COVID itself?
He says,
the infection?
He says they said I did.
Okay. All right. So maybe that hastened it too?
Well, he just says he transitioned from cancer, and the other stuff was just like a kind of a boot kick out the door.
Oh, okay. All right. Here's a question. You were my hero when I was 18 years of age. You said in a Parade magazine one time that whenever you were perceived as less than, you would resolve to show them that you can rise above the naysayers. How influential were your parents with this high moral resolve? That's very cool.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
And he really thanks the person for asking that, because he says his parents were a big influence. He said his parents never allowed him to say, well, they're not going to let me, they're saying this, or I can't do this. They always turned it around and said, what can you do about this? What can you do about this? He says they were very big on what could I do about it. And he says, and within the family, I feel like he had one sibling, and he says they were very big about us taking our power, is really what it was. I don't think they said take your power, but he says they were about us taking a hold of our own life, because they definitely believed in destiny. You took your own destiny in your hands.
All right, real brief now. Did you actually believe that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction?
With the information he got, yes.
Okay. What do you think about, do you think the military industrial complex is a nefarious part of the deep state? I'm not saying you, I'm saying the military industrial contract, because war is very lucrative for that arm.
He says, he's telling me like they share a door, is what he says. They share a door.
Okay.
That's all he's saying about it.
Okay.
So
Did
it's like
George-
there's 2 rooms
Yeah, there's
and
a little side thing going on. And
there's a door that they share to go in and out.
were
is
you
what he-
part of the shady part side or not?
He said, absolutely not.
Of course not. Did George W. Bush instigate the war, knowing the reasoning was false, or did he too, like you, believe that there were weapons of mass destruction?
He says that he says not all facts were presented, and he says he's not really coming out and say, but he's there was more information than what was led to believe.
Okay, so are you saying that President Bush really thought there was a need to go to war because of those?
No, that's not what he's saying.
What is he saying? Did George Bush just like, well, maybe they are, but let's go to war anyway? Take revenge on what they did to my father or whatever.
It's more of he says it's more of like, well, the possibilities could be there, so let's just make sure.
Just what the second thing I said. Okay. Were there weapons of mass destruction, but they were just shipped away to some other country before we got there?
He said no, they didn't move that fast.
Okay. Have you met the Iraqi children who died because of your invasion for non-existent, a little bitterness here, non-existent weapons of mass destruction? Have you met the Iraqis that died? Any of them?
He says yes, but it's not, he said yes. And he also says it was more of the meeting was, it's more of a, let's discuss how everything is or was. It's because the way he's shown me, it's like they all met up together on the other side for something that was like they were a participant. They were a willing participant.
Okay. So now looking back at the Iraq War, what are your thoughts? I mean, you could go into whether this was part of the contract, and if so, what that contract led to, or anything.
Well,
or regret.
He says even when you're here, you kind of have regrets, because you see things. He says, hindsight's always 20/20, as we say. And he says, so you are able to like, well, we could have moved here and done this, or we should have checked this or validated all this other stuff. He says, but being from where he is, he says, war is not a solution.
Yeah, of course. Well,
It's like they're fighting the wrong thing. He says, we're fighting the wrong thing.
And what do you think about nation building? Were you in agreement of nation building after wars?
He says, yes, he was. He was in agreement with that. Given what he knew when he was here, he said yes.
Okay. So what was the spiritual contract behind the Iraq War? I mean, because like World War II was horrible, yet it did usher in decades of peace.
So we think.
Yeah, so we think, until now.
That's what he said, so we think.
Yeah.
What we did was we put a Band-Aid on something.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody got a stack of cash.
Yeah.
To keep them happy. And then that stack of cash ran out. Yeah. And then they're not happy anymore.
Who's they? The military industrial complex? Part of the deep state?
That and just other countries that we have struggles with. He said it's like,
okay.
He says, we're in debt. He's showing me our deficit is so high. And when he says that, he's showing me, and I'm like, that's like crazy dollars to be in debt. I mean, and he says it is. No one stops to think like, okay, 500 million is a lot of dollars to be in debt. And but he's showing me the stack of money runs out. So then we go in there and he says we just make things up.
Ugh, we can't afford it. That's the problem.
But it's not just us, it's other people who
okay.
are making things up
Oh, I see.
to say, okay, let's do this. He goes, it's kind of like the story in your head. You make up a story in your head about somebody as to why they're doing something, and then you make it up in your head that it's all about you and that they did this to you. And so now you're mad at them because of what appears to be what they're doing to you.
Okay. Now, just yes or no on this one. Did the Jesuit, Freemason, Illuminati have any kind of inducements or blackmail material on you so to get you to be elected to political power and to commence the war in Iraq? Yes or no?
He says no. Manipulation, no.
There was manipulation?
Yes, it's like, you tell a story another way, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so yeah.
Is it true that there are at least 20 or so other higher security clearances above the president that are making decisions? Wow. And Majestic being the highest?
Well, he says he was never privy to that information.
Okay.
But being where he is, the president is not the highest.
Oh. Is the Majestic, is that really a role? And who is that? Who's the highest? I'm not a name, of course,
Yeah. He says, he goes, we can go with that, the Majestic. He says, we can use that. It's the high. He goes, but even though there's a high, there's another person that thinks they're higher because it's the way it's driven.
Okay, well, I don't know if I like that. We don't elect the Majestic.
No.
Now, why did you dislike President Trump so strongly? And has your opinion changed?
Of course it's changed because he's over here. He's saying, of course, he only has but love for President Trump.
You probably didn't like his mouth.
He says that it was very disrespectful. He says very disrespectful. He said former President Trump, he says, could have gone a long way had he cleaned up his mouth.
I know. What do you think about his policies?
There is some bullying in it, he said. And he says, and those were things that he was not fond of because he had experienced bullying as a kid and stuff, and just he says, of course, experience racism and just and he says, and former President Trump touched base on things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
From where you are now, do you know whether the election was rigged against Trump?
He says he's going to say no, the election went just like a lot of the others go.
All right, which might not be good. All right, I would like to also know, someone wants to know your thoughts about George W. Bush, both personality and as a leader. Do you think he was unqualified and in over his head?
He doesn't feel like he was unqualified, but could have asked for more help, I guess, more assistance. And when he says that, I feel like it's an awful lot for one person to bear being president. I mean, I just can't even imagine myself. And it's almost like sometimes he just says, like no one to reach out to say, I need help.
Okay. Maybe too much pride and ego. What are your thoughts on Biden? Is he just a puppet for the political image, and the military is in reality in control of the country? So let's just start out with thoughts about Biden.
He says he believes what he believes. Biden believes what he's saying, like he believes in that. I don't, he says, is he, and then you asked, is he a puppet?
Yeah. Somebody else really pulling the strings, so to speak.
There are other people saying, here, read this, here, do this, here, try that, here, do this. It's like they're
Okay.
doing that. Mhm.
So how do you think he's handling the presidency? Let's start out with the way he's handling the Putin's invading Ukraine. How is Biden handling that? And what should he do differently, if anything?
He says that we shouldn't send our troops around over any in there. That's what he is saying, because I feel like he thinks that's what they're expecting.
So you think he's doing a good job? I mean, what do you think about him so far? Just continuing to buy Russian oil instead of, imposing an embargo on it, because those barrels are just filled with blood, essentially, the blood of Ukrainian children.
Well, and that's it. It's like he's showing me cameras, and I don't know why, but it's like buying cameras that are stolen. You're helping the thief, you're supporting the thieves. And so why do they stop stealing cameras?
Well, if you were Biden's military advisor, what would you tell him to do right now?
Halt all everything with Russia. He said, put a what does he say, embargo or something on it? Like stop everything. Stop everything. Yeah.
And what about becoming more energy independent here, so that Europe won't suffer that loss of they need energy, and they get 40% of it from Russia, or 40% of Europe. I don't know. Can't remember. So should we like put the green planet thing aside just momentarily and start the drilling again, and all that kind of, start the pipelines? Should we do that just for the sake of weaning off the teat of Russian oil?
But he says you don't have to stop completely with one thing to go with another. He says you can he says there's called balance. And that's what he says he tried to advocate, is balance with that, because you just can't go full steam ahead green and stop another way when you've been going full steam ahead on the oil. Yeah. And he said, so you have to kind of balance, go a little by little, and he says doing half green and half oil is better than what we did 20 years ago. So, and he says we could do that. And he says there are other ways on how for all of us to get our fuel, but they're not telling us, or we're not utilizing it.
Yeah, that's probably 0 point energy that's infinite. I bet they know that ETs probably have taught them how to tap into that, but that's would be pretty much free. So I'm not going to do it. But our oil and liquid natural gas is cleaner than Russia's, and so if they're really concerned about the planet, and so that's why they cut the Keystone pipeline and this, that, and the other thing, then why are they pushing to get dirty stuff from other nations, including Russia? Why does Biden want that if he's so for the green?
That's not being for the green. Yeah,
I don't think so either. Okay, I don't understand this question. Are you at core energy a negative entity? And I'm sure it's no, but whatever it is, why would somebody ask that?
Well, he says the answer, he kind of chuckles and he says no. And he says the reason why the person asked that is because they're divulging, looking into that type of area of the either world, the afterworld, the world, or whatever. Okay. They're looking in that arena. And so that's why they're asking. But he says they really should be looking in a different direction.
Okay. What is your perspective on Putin's invading Ukraine?
Well, it wasn't all of a sudden that something that just happened. It was very well planned
Yeah.
for a while now.
Yeah.
He, sends love is what he's doing. Him and a lot of other people on the other side, a lot of souls are sending love in that direction, because that's where their biggest deficit is over there, he says, is love. And that's what we all should be sending them, is love.
Yeah, that's come up more than once. Is he mad? I mean, insane?
He says you have to be to do that.
Well, what's going to happen? Is he going to get assassinated? Or this general's going to take him out, or lock him up? What's going to happen to end this?
I feel like he's very well protected.
Yeah.
And he says, so it's almost like he feels, I feel like I get the energy feeling of like a coward,
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, all he's saying is, you just don't behave like this and get away with it.
Okay. Yeah.
He's not gonna say.
Think he will? Do you see Putin invading other countries outside of the Ukraine?
No.
Okay. What can we do to help the Ukrainian people, the refugees, and their pets, in addition to donations and well wishes and sending love, of course?
Well, he says, there's a lot of people going and making sure that there's enough water, food supply, and stuff like that.
Okay.
And a lot of people are helping them to escape, to other countries and stuff, to get them out of there. Yeah.
Is there a government on earth that is not corrupt? If so, who are they? I want to move there.
He said there is a consciousness that's not corrupt, and that's why a lot of this is coming out, is because
What government would that be, though?
he says, well, we don't really need a government.
Okay.
just-
But there's no real separate government of a country that is not corrupt.
Correct. He says we don't really need a government.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like you want to defund the police. Of course you need a government, General Powell.
Well, he
You
says
don't need a corrupt one.
you need guidance. He says you need like a resource to go to and stuff like that. A resource
We need
place.
somebody to protect our ability to be free and to prosper.
Yes, but he says
Oh.
you don't really need like someone governing
Yeah.
like it is now. He says that needs to be redesigned. But
It's
yes,
too big, way too big.
yes.
Colin, I believe you were presidential material. The trickery you suffered was evil. Who brought you down and why? Did somebody bring you down? I didn't know that.
He smiles and he said he thought he was president material too.
But you never wanted to be president. You know
Well,
that?
he said because he knew he could be more effective not going into that role, because he says, look at how difficult it was for Obama to be president.
Yeah.
Everybody tried to say all kinds of things about him,
Yeah.
and he was no exclusion to that. He's telling me. He says that he was just more effective where he was. And he said, did somebody bring me down? He said he don't think anybody brought him down.
I don't think so either. All right. What is the contract in regards to Russia and China, and what will the outcome be? I mean, what do you give us your take on Russia and China and wanting to take over the world?
Well, the way he tells me, it's almost like somebody told them that if they did certain things, they would have full control. So that's why they behave the way they behave, thinking they're going to get full control.
Yeah.
But that's not happening.
Okay. Is there a politician in the United States that really cares about the people? Who would that person be?
He said, of course there is. He goes, there's a lot of people that in politics that really care about the people.
I think Trump does. He just has a mouth on him.
Yes. Yes.
Who else? Manchin? Joe Manchin?
He said yes, he does. Let me see who, he's showing me a woman there's a woman's, I don't know if she's in
Gnome?
she's in
South Dakota, maybe?
he's just showing me a woman that's really into it, but he says there's somebody in every state that is a good politician.
Sure.
He
Yeah.
says, because especially the younger ones coming in, he's showing me like 40 and up, and even in the 30s, they're moving up, wanting to be, because they want to shift what's happening.
All right, what do you think about the squad, like AOC and Tlaib and the 4 women?
He says he thinks it's good.
Like to bring contrast?
He said yes, and he says it brings a different look to things. Who are they?
Well, do you believe in their Green New Deal, eliminated cows and jetliners and all that stuff? That's pretty draconian.
To eliminate, what did you say?
Cows, and they want to tear all buildings down and build them up energy independent, and it's really draconian. It's huge. As Trump says, it's baby talk.
He agrees with Trump on that.
Okay, this is a story, this person is saying, covered by Alex Jones, and it was leaked by an active duty CIA agent and Dr. Jim Garrow, that runs Pink Pagoda Girls, a rescue service for trafficked women from China. And at the time of detonation, there was even substantial seismic activity offshore. When you were serving with Obama, did he order 3 nuclear weapons to be removed from the arsenal and they were going to be detonated inside America? One of the admirals took one of them offshore and detonated it in 200 feet of water. The other 2 vanished thanks to the handiwork of 2 generals. The operation was thwarted by the military. This was around the time that Obama was discharging many generals and colonels for petty incidents stored on their personal files. So I'm confused. Did that really happen? When they get long, I get confused.
Yeah, no, I was having to, like, Erik was helping me follow along. He says there's some truth to some of that story.
Did Obama order 3 nuclear weapons to be removed from the arsenal? And did he order the generals to detonate them, offshore?
He's just saying some of that is true, is what he's saying. Yeah.
Why on earth, this is not an Obama lover, why on earth did you endorse Obama again, in quotes, on a second term over Sarah Palin? Well, they weren't running for the same office. But.
No, they weren't. He shows me you got to weigh out your options and you just go with what you think is the better option.
Did you think Obama was an excellent president?
He held his own, he says. He held his own.
Do you think Biden is a good president? And does he care about the people?
There's definitely a lot of things he could clean up on.
Okay, well, that's okay. We don't have to go into it.
Yeah.
Does Deep State have an ET gifted dead man switch that they use as leverage so that none of them go to prison and we all get our public depositions? Is there a dead man ET extraterrestrials gifted us a dead man switch so that none of the Deep State ever go to prison? I don't know what that would be.
I don't either. He says no,
Okay.
and he just says no. He says no.
Were you privy to the information that ETs exist?
Yeah.
Okay. Does the deep state faction of our US government have a working relationship with an alien race, either terrestrial or extraterrestrial?
There's a connection there, he says. There's a
Are
connection with some.
connected to ones that are malevolent or benevolent? Or both? I don't know.
Well, of course, it's going to be the ones that are not of good serving, the best serving, of course, those, he says. But he says there's a connection there, he says.
Oh, the deep state is the deep state faction of our government. Is it connected to or have a relationship with reptilians, for example? Tall whites, small grays, what?
Erik is stepping in, and Erik says he's just saying that there's a connection there.
And that's all he wants to share.
Yeah.
Okay. But they're probably if there's a deep state, connected to the deep state, they're probably not the good guys.
Correct.
Is there a war going on in space? Cool.
There is, yes, but not like weapons flying and stuff like that. But is there combat? He said, yes, there is some sort.
But not in the sense that of conventional warfare.
Correct.
Maybe use things that we don't even have
Correct.
any idea of existing.
Well, and he says they use us.
How so?
Because they try to grab our consciousness.
Oh, wow.
To go in their direction.
Has that happened to Putin?
Well, it had to have.
So extraterrestrials had something to do with him going, like making that crazy decision to invade Ukraine?
There's a connection there, he says. There's a connection.
What about Biden? Is he compromised by extraterrestrials? Consciousness compromised. Probably all positions. I don't know.
He's not saying that, and I feel like he's not saying a whole lot because Biden is our active president.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that to poor Uncle Joe. All right, leaks from an ex-CIA agent said that they have knowledge there is an extraterrestrial race whose intentions are to conquer underway, and they are referred to us as the bugs. They want to conquer us. It's not written perfectly, but we were warned they are on the way by an extraterrestrial we are allied with. This came out approximately 6 to 8 months ago. Since you have an all-knowing position now, can you give us some insight on what to expect? We all deserve to know the truth, which is true. So is there some extraterrestrial race that is on their way to conquer us bugs? Somebody called in an Orkin consult, I guess. Who's Terminex? Who's rescue?
Well, he says, the way that question is like that, like we don't have a defense. We don't have any protection. And he says, and we do have protection. And it's going within our own self, making ourselves right, he's saying. Instead of looking on the outside and blaming everybody, it's like getting in within your own self, because whatever that extraterrestrial's doing, whatever they're trying to do, if you're becoming, he says, okay with like aligning with yourself and getting that okay, then you're building that consciousness of
It resists.
Of light and love and all this.
Right.
And
it's like rising to 5D.
Yes. And that's what they're wanting to do, is to shrink that consciousness and grow their consciousness. So when we sit there and hate and condemn and do all these things, he says, we're helping that consciousness to grow.
Okay.
Erik's just doing this to me. He says, I'm
That's so
preaching.
true. Yeah. Live
But so,
life in love, not fear/hate.
and he says it's good to educate yourself because he's all about education. He thinks education is vital to everybody. But he says, but when you get educated, utilize that education. So with the person that's that question, utilize that and ask, how can I better serve myself?
Yeah.
Because he says, what we do to ourselves affects the planet.
So it's like negative entities, from other dimensions. They are attracted to the negative emotions, fear. They feed on it, the fear, the anger, and all that. So are these extraterrestrials similar? They feed on and are attracted to people who live in fear and hate?
Well, they don't live in fear and hate per se like we do, but what it does is when we're in that, our frequency gets lower. So there is
easier for them to capture our consciousness. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like misery likes company.
Yeah. What has your transition brought to you for understanding more on this planet? Well, you said that war is unnecessary. Everything should be healed with love, right?
Yes. He says he sees from his transition where he could have been promoting more of that.
Okay.
And so he's also doing that on the other side,
good.
helping with that.
Good.
And he says education, that is the thing. He says the secrets is what keeps us stunted.
Yeah.
And he says the secrets. I feel like he hated knowing secrets.
Oh, yeah. I really like Condoleezza Rice. You worked with her, right?
He said yes.
You liked her too? I mean, that's someone who also believed highly in education, very educated woman.
Yes, he says very professional, very solid.
Would she make a good president?
She would have if she would have had some strong support.
Okay. Well, maybe she will have her support. What was your spiritual mission here on Earth, General Powell?
He was, he says one is to be a leader, one is to bring, he says, really to kind of bring balance to things. I feel like the way he said, like he kept a balance with a lot of the things. He says people respected me in my position, the military and in politics. He was very faithful to everything that he did. He said he was very committed, very faithful.
Yeah, I believe that. Do you think there's as much systemic racism in our American society as the left would have us believe? Or have we evolved to some degree?
He said, of course we have evolved. And he says, but when you get stuck on how much there is, you're not focusing on what else there is.
Well, the left very often uses the race card as a political, weaponizes that as the race card, basically, for political purposes. Or am I wrong? Am I wrong?
He says that's racist too, for them to do that.
Yeah. I think the more we concentrate on other people's skin color and how different we are, the more there'll be racism. So just bringing up the whole race card, I agree, it's racist. Just forget it. I just hope we just interbreed till we're all the same color. I mean, get over the skin difference and treat everybody as you would treat your mother.
Well, he says, it had to be brought out that there is that going on, the racism, because there is.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
But
still have racism.
But
it's been weaponized, I'm saying, I think. I don't know.
Yes, it has been. But he's also saying there's people behind the curtains that keep it activated.
That's too bad. And I'm sure it's on both sides, really.
It is.
What
It
is
is.
what is your biggest regret?
He's showing me with his wife. I feel like he said his biggest regret is not being more, I feel more present with his wife, is what he's saying.
Yeah, well, you were a busy man.
Yeah,
What was your biggest regret in your career?
he says, don't ask me for details, but he says there was a couple of times that he should have been a whistleblower.
Okay, I won't ask. What lifetime? Can you share another life that most influenced your one as General Powell?
He says, and to our, if we do our timelines, I feel like it was about 5 lifetimes ago or so,
Okay.
several hundred years ago. He was a big, he makes me feel like he was like a mountaineer, like a hiker or something across large mountains. And I feel like it was more in, I feel like, it feels like the Europe area is what it feels like. And he led troops through there, like troops to finding better places to harvest or grow food or something like what he's showing me. And he said he led his troops, and it didn't end successfully. I feel like they were attacked by wild animals or something. So
Okay.
maybe.
Oh, wow.
And so he really brought that life, parts of that, into this life to make sure that things were, of course, consciously he didn't know, but he was very big on checking everything, making sure every I was dotted, every T was crossed.
Measure twice, cut once. Really?
Yes.
Okay.
That was a big influence for him, he says.
Interesting. Can we ever get past violence to overcome our differences as humans? Will we ever?
He says we will. We will.
How many centuries or thousands of years?
It's not going to be thousands of years.
It'll be less than that?
Yeah, it'll be less than that. But he says there will always be one person that doesn't register 100% up here, he's showing me.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not going to be to the factor that it is. And he says the reason being is because it's not going to be where somebody goes around showing off their high top sneakers saying, look what I got.
Yeah.
When they don't have, it's not going to be that kind of way anymore, because everybody's going to have what they need.
That's nice. And all we need is love and food and a shelter.
Well, he says, with the love, everybody can have food and shelter and that.
Yeah.
And the way it's almost like you're going to have all of that. But if you want to have whatever he's showing me, like an extra boat, then there will be avenues for you to be able to get that. And you're going to know why you have it or why you don't.
Okay. Would a world day of prayer work to pray for peace and kindness for each other and pray that nobody feels fear and only love for one another?
He said, absolutely, it would make a big shift. He says, but that's a big order to think that everybody would do that.
And the same person, of course, probably. What would happen if we set aside one day worldwide every year on the same day for every nation, a day of peace?
He says that would work, but why not do it once a month?
Yeah, absolutely.
He says, what's once a month for 30 minutes?
Yeah, I agree. That means wherever wherever there's a war going on that day will be a truce for 12. Oh, this is what that person's saying. It's like, just tell every nation, stop war for 24 hours. Once a year. Like,
He
break
says
the
that,
violence.
yeah, but there's always going to be that one.
I know, that's a hard, that's, all right, that's all. Do you have anything else? Any final messages for your fan club?
He said he's kind of on some kind of cologne because I can smell it. I was wondering, what is it that I'm smelling?
Yeah.
And I don't smell. The house could be burning and I don't smell it. So, but he's got on some kind of cologne. He smells so clean, so good. I guess he wore cologne or something, but he just smells so fresh. He says the best advice he says that he would give is what he gave to himself, what it was given to him, and what he gave to his family was keep looking at you, what you can do better within your own self. And, like, what can you do today? What can you do today to help another person? What can you do to help you move ahead? He also is telling me he loves the color pink that you're wearing.
Oh, thank you.
And he says that color has a beautiful vibration to it. And it's just such a gentle vibration.
Coral,
that
like a coral
it's
color.
coral.
Yeah.
To me, it looks pink. And but he says that, that color, the coral, he
This is
says,
pink. Well,
he says that color you're wearing, he's telling me it has a vibration that's a gentleness to it. And he said, so he's saying, so he wants to acknowledge that of what you're wearing helps with that.
Okay.
But he says, it's we've got to start taking ownership of our own self.
I know.
And he says, and that is something that he really tried to promote when he was here about us
Be
taking
you and own it. Be you and own it.
Yes.
Okay, I forgot a couple of questions that I usually ask, but they weren't on this list. What were you here to learn?
He says one of them was, he says, he kind of laughs. He goes, it might be hard to believe. He goes, patience.
Okay. Gosh, you seem so patient. Oh, maybe patient. So maybe you learned it. All right. Can you say some little known fact about you? Like every Tuesday you like to wear 2 different color socks. I don't know, some fun little thing that nobody knows or very few people know about you.
He said he really loved to drink his coffee, and he's showing me I feel like sugar cubes in it or something.
Okay.
Is what he's showing me, is how he really enjoyed how he liked to drink his coffee.
All right.
And I feel like he had like a little something sweet with it as well, like maybe not with icing on it, but like I don't know, tea cake or something.
Okay. Who did you enjoy working with under more, Obama or Bush?
He says Bush.
Okay. And last question. Oh, why was that actually?
The maturity level.
Okay. Also, what do you think about Erik? I mean, does he make a good cup of coffee or what?
He said, well, yes. He says he loves Erik. He says, how can you not? But he really loves the work that Erik does. And he says he wished that he would have known Erik when he was here, because he definitely would have utilized him. He's telling me he did utilize a lot of, he goes, this is another fact about him that isn't known. He was a very spiritual man. He's telling me he did a lot of prayer work. He also did a lot of writing, and he definitely believed in quiet time. And but he says he says Erik is very polite. He's showing me he's an upstanding young man, but he's very he admires his growth, and the way he shows his growth is his energy, how big he has become. And and Erik doesn't run around bragging about it either.
No, never was that way. Well, thank you so much. It was an honor to interview you, and I'll let you borrow my sweater anytime you want, by the way.
He says, thank you. He says, it was an honor to be here. He says he appreciates it, and he loves what you do, he's saying, and he's continuing doing his work on the other side. But
Awesome.
he shows me he likes to play golf. So
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know if he did that when he was here or didn't have enough time, but the way he's showing me, Erik is saying he didn't really get to do it as much as he wanted. So he's really enjoying playing golf.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, y'all, check out Denise Ramon at deniseramon.com. Awesome medium, awesome healer. You have to check out her site. And Erik, I love you. I love you, Denise. And pretty soon we have questions now coming up for our first session coming up. I just said that twice, on the Havana syndrome. Very interesting. So please hit the notification button. We have all sorts of other things that we're going to have sessions about that are very important and topical. But anyway, don't forget to share this. Don't forget to subscribe, and check out the Channeling Erik blog and the Atlanta Scalar YouTube channel and site. All right. I love you.
Love you. He says, I love you, Mama.
Bye.
Bye.